I'm looking for a quorum. I see 1, 2, 3, 4,
I see 6.
5, 6. Susan, if I'm correct, a quorum is 6 at this time. Is that right?
Yes, Logan was just chatting with me about that. Yep.
So we'll just so this is Eric Sterling. I'm calling the September 11, 2023 meeting of the Montgomery County Policing Advisory Commission to order. I note that our Vice Chair Ty McKinney is present, Christy Daphnis, Robin Castor, Vernon Ricks, Lori Ekstrand, Christina Delane. So we're up to 7 now. And we typically invite our guests to sign in on the chat. Is that correct?
Yeah.
The first order of business would be the consideration and adoption of the minutes of the meeting of August, our August meeting. Have folks had a chance to review those minutes? August 13th.
Move the minutes subject to any corrections.
Vernon moves to adopt the minutes. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Christy. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand so we can see on the camera. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Are any opposed? And any abstentions? Motion carries. Our first order of business then this evening is a short overview of the automated traffic enforcement system. This is something that we've been thinking about in the context of our traffic report, and I know that it's also something that Christina also has a special concern about as well. So we have speaking about this evening. Pardon me, some from the Montgomery County Police Department, Captain Warren Jensen. Is that correct?
That is correct. Can you hear me okay?
We can. And did you want to share your screen with us?
No, actually, the director Tippery is going to have all the details for the automated traffic enforcement that we had talked about with Ms. Farag. I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Warren Jensen. I'm newly promoted captain in charge of our traffic operations division, and Chris is our resident expert.
Well, Captain, congratulations on your promotion.
Thank you, sir.
So this is an item that will go until about 7:05. So we have 30 minutes. So let's figure perhaps, can the presentation be done in the order of like 10 to 12 minutes, and then the balance will be for questions and comments?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yep.
Perfect. Mr. Tippery, then you're recognized.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Chris Tippery. I'm the Director of Operations for the Automated Traffic Enforcement Unit. Put together just a short presentation, and I'm going to attempt to share my screen. I get a host disabled participants from screen sharing.
Well, I have not, but let me see what I can do.
Thank you, Susan.
This says all participants.
Well, I think I got it now.
Okay.
By the way, I want to welcome Captain Satinsky. I see that you are here. And also just to note that we got a message from Sergeant Brewer that unfortunately she is probably not going to be able to join us this evening. Well, I can see the screen that you're putting up, Director Tippery. Go ahead.
Okay, just a brief overview. Automated traffic enforcement is part of the Field Services Bureau of the Montgomery County Police Department, specifically the Traffic Division. In automated traffic enforcement, we have 27% professional staff, currently with 5 vacant positions. And of those 27 professional staff, 1 is the director, which is myself. We have 13 field operations unit employees and 13 violation processing and support unit employees, as well as 1 sworn police officer. And his sole responsibility is to approve the speed camera citations only, and that's required by state law.
Got it.
Okay, so we'll just briefly talk about, we'll go in order. So traffic article 21809 is citations based on a speed monitoring camera. The fine amount for that is currently set by law at $40, which is a civil violation only and no points. It's no more than all the automated citations are no more than a parking citation that's issued to the vehicle's registered owner. As of September 1st, 2003, we have 110 speed cameras in operation. Of those 110, 66 are portable camera units, which we call PCUs. 38 fixed pole cameras, which some of you may have seen get replaced recently with some new technology. 6 vans. We utilize those vans in areas where we can't put a speed camera due to parking restrictions or challenges we have with the environment. The speed camera expansion, we signed that contract in 2022, and the expansion adds 10 cameras per year until 2026. And at that time, we'll have 96 portable camera units, totaling out our total enforcement capabilities for speed only at 140 cameras.
And all of those are operating, or what kind of downtime do they have?
There is no downtime. The only time we shut down the unit is on Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Okay.
That's it. It's up 24/7. Another thing that's required by law is we have to test those cameras every day. So part of the or majority of the staff's tasks for the field enforcement guys is to turn off those cameras and turn them on daily and ensure that they're meeting all the state requirements for deployment. We have to generate a log for each camera every day. Our contractor also responds out for our PCUs, our portable camera units, and replaces the batteries to keep those operational and move them around as we need. That's why with this contract, we stuck solely with portable camera units and not any fixed poles, because we can touch more locations with portable cameras than we can with fixed. As we all know, when you pull up, everybody knows where the camera is, everybody slows down, everybody speeds back up. What we do have to remind some people is we've decommissioned a few speed cameras, of fixed pole speed cameras, and those are still approved sites. So for instance, on Route 28 going out towards Foolsville, there was a decommissioned camera. Everybody figured out that it was decommissioned. We got a request from the community that the speeds were increasing in that area again. So we put a portable camera unit there because it is still an approved location, and started enforcement, and everybody realized right away that there was a camera back in that area.
Got it.
So
Mr. Ricks, could I ask, Mr. Tippery, could I ask you to take a question from
sure.
Mr. Ricks?
Yes. Is there, I know you said the cameras are operating all the time. There is some impression that the cameras in school zones are not operating on the weekends or when school is not in session.
That's correct. So the speed cameras in school zones specifically are an exception. Those only can run between the hours of 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. Monday through Friday. So in some locations where we don't have fixed pole cameras, we put portable cameras in the school zones, and we'll pull those back out on the weekends and put them in other locations, which some of the residents in the areas are sad to see, but we have to turn those cameras off on the weekends. There has been legislative questions brought up as to whether we want that changed to put them on 24/7. But at this point, we're restricted by legislation.
Yeah, and I raised that question because I know that there's been a lot in the news just here in the last couple of days from Fairfax County, I believe it is, where they were complaining that the tickets had been adding up in school zones or something like that. So
Yeah, we're actually we reached out to our partner agencies, and we're working with Fairfax County and their program. Since we've been in this for so long, a lot of agencies do reach out to us for some advice, and we've met with them virtually a couple times, and they're going to come to our unit to see how we run, because they're looking to expand also, specifically in Fairfax. They're looking to expand to 80 cameras, which is quite a bit in a year's period. So they need to get on the fast track.
and are we still,
Mr. Ricks, let's let Mr. Tippery continue, and then we can take our questions, if that's okay.
that's fine.
Okay, so statistically, beginning with the program when it started in, we ran the stats fiscally between starting back in 2015 and all the way up to the present day. As you see that what we want to see on that blue chart on the blue bar is the total count of citations, which is decreasing over the amount of the time of the program. And that's exactly what we want to see. It shows us that the program is working. We also started showing statistics on the amount of citations that have been paid in state by Maryland registered vehicle owners, out of state, whether they've been paid or unpaid, what is outstanding within the state and what is outstanding without the state. And one reason why we started tracking that type of information is, again, there's been legislative questions as to accountability. The District of Columbia this year is trying to add points to their citation, which has far-reaching implications than just in the District of Columbia. So that's something that's we're waiting to see what happens with that. So if you notice in FY 22 and 23, we're starting to go up a little bit. That's with the expansion of the program. One of the things the expansion allows us for is to implement high resolution cameras. Back when the program started with the contract back in 2015, those are the same cameras that have been operating since the program started. With this new contract, we required 4K resolution cameras. And to keep this from happening again, in our contract, it says we will have the latest and greatest all the time. So if camera 2.0 comes out tomorrow, the expectation is with our contract is we get camera 2.0 tomorrow.
One quick question, if I may.
Sure.
You
Ron?
have data. It's about this particular slide. You have data here about out of state versus in state.
Mm-hmm.
Do you track similar data for in county and out of county?
No,
Thank you.
we just do it by the registered vehicle.
Which
We might be able to pull the data for the registered vehicle.
by county? Yeah, sure you would. I mean, it just
We'd have to work
requires-
through that.
Yeah, it would be work, but you could probably do it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Go ahead.
With traffic article 21202, which is a traffic light with a steady indication. Our fine is currently set at $75. Again, it's a civil with no points. And in the state law, it actually gives us the capability to go up to a $100 fine, but that has to be approved by the district court judge for Maryland. Currently it's set at 75, but again, he has, if we petition to him, he may increase it, but we don't see a need to. As of September 1st, 2003, you can see we have 51 red light cameras are in operation. The red light camera expansion adds 5 cameras per year until 2026. That PCU should not be in there. And the 76 total automated red light cameras is which we'll end up with at the end in 2026. Now, as a reminder, when we say red light cameras, that's not an entire intersection. That is one camera in one direction. So adding 5, that essentially could light up all 4 directions and 1 for an additional location. So when we place these cameras, it's based on collision data. And then we do a called a video validation, where we go out there and capture how many individuals are just crossing the stop line, but entering the pedestrian right away, or all out just running the light, and the seconds in which all that occurs. And we pull that data together along with the crash data to determine where we're going to use that camera, because we only have a limited amount. So again, you'll see on the next slide that red light enforcement has also gone down. We track it again by in-state, out-of-state, and who's paid and who hasn't. But you'll notice a big increase back down on this year's, which is 2022, 2023. The reason for that large increase, again, is because of the high resolution of the cameras. Our processors are able to see tags more clearly that would have normally not been issued. And the new technology, well, I'll explain the old technology required pucks to be placed into the pavement. Any one puck that was placed in the pavement malfunctioned, it turned off the whole intersection. Everything had to work in conjunction with each other to keep that intersection up and running. That's old technology. So the new technology does not use pucks. It's the cameras you'll see on the sides of the intersections that have already been replaced. So we have no intersections out of service at all in the entire county. And
Good.
hopefully with this new technology, that'll keep from happening.
Good. Sharif Branson, I see your hand.
Yeah, thank you. I have a couple of questions. So one is, and I think you may have just mentioned that, what is the process? You mentioned that you all have a contractor that does, I guess, some of the maintenance or daily checking of the machines.
Yes.
I'm wondering, what is the process for actually issuing those tickets? I mean, once that check is done and, you figure out, these, where the video violators are, is that also handled by a contractor, the reading the plates and, and sending out notifications? I mean, what is that process? How does that happen? And then my second question, I'm gonna ask them both so that you can answer them, because my second question is, I'm wondering whether the placement of the machines, the automated enforcement machines, is coordinated with the physical placement of officers. Is there are there plans that, where there's high volume at particular intersections that's, determined by these cameras, is there then backup to, of officers being there? I mean, I'm just wondering about the coordination aspect. So those are my two questions.
Okay, our contractor, once the image is captured, once the violation is captured, it goes to our contractor for an initial review to ensure that everything, all the elements to the state requirement are met. In our contract, they have to send us 95% of what's prosecutable. So if a tag is unable to be read, if it's got a tag cover on it, for whatever reason that tag can't match that vehicle description and clearly be seen, they can't send that to me. I have to have a 95% prosecutable rate, because with my staff reviewing a lot of violations every day, we don't have time to look at stuff that doesn't meet the state's requirement for issuance.
Okay.
So we have a check and balance. We audit their stuff to make sure that they're not sending us, because there's fines in place if they don't stick to the 95% issuance rate. So then that violation comes over to my processors. My processors have been trained and they're not released to look at citations on their own until they're fully capable. They work with other staff members. We have basically, it's similar to like the police program, a field training program where there's a lot of background. There's background training on where the program started, because they ultimately have to go to court and adjudicate these citations if someone wishes to contest a citation. So nobody goes to court by themselves. We do have a few retired officers on staff that can assist with courtroom testimony because, as you know, somebody coming into our unit that has never worked in a law enforcement atmosphere before, testifying in court can be quite intimidating. So it's nice to have a few retired officers on staff so they can assist them with that. And can you give me the last part of your question again?
Just okay, so you have the review, you know, you have the internal review, the sort of check and balance monitoring, and then it gets sent out to, does it get sent straight out to the driver?
No,
or
does
it go somewhere else?
It goes back to our vendor, and our vendor has a contract with a printing company that prints out our violations on our state's approved citation. And the citation that people receive in the mail, that is approved by the district court judge, so we can't make any alterations to that document.
Okay,
we've had requests in the past if they could be bilingual. We can't. That's the judge has to make that determination. That would be altering the citation.
Thank you. That was the process question. And then I asked about the coordination with physical, you know, police cars.
But we're inside the traffic unit. So we coordinate with the deputy director of the traffic division on where our enforcement's going to be. As everybody knows, in the beginning of like the first week of October, we're going to have a big push, as we do every year, for school zones. And we would coordinate with those officers. So we ensure that if they stop somebody that violates a school bus or runs a red light, they send us an email and we'll flag that registration. So we ensure that they don't get an additional citation.
2 tickets. Okay.
Yeah, but we work all together. And if they're going to do an enforcement in a specific area, if there's a saturation, traffic enforcement detail, we'll pull our cameras out, all of our PCUs out of the area, so they can do their coordinated effort.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Christy, I know you have a lot of expertise in this area, so I want to hear your question. I want to know, Mr. Tippery, how many more slides do you have?
We're just going to go to buses next.
Okay.
I'm going to make a really quick comment, if you don't mind.
Yes, please, Christy.
I was just going to say, just because people on the call may not know this, there are really like strict guidelines that are approved by the state as the police department sets up the automated enforcement program. There's only a certain amount of cameras that they can have that need to follow like placement guidance and all of that, like has to be in a certain area. Like you can't be like catching someone's speed as they're going down a hill, for example. You can't be in a blind, like there's a lot of requirements that the state agrees upon with the police department in advance. At least I know for the speeding enforcement, and I believe it's the same for the red light, but just wanted to make that point because like there are a lot of requirements that need to be followed with the state law and the automated enforcement plan that y'all put together.
Yeah, for speed, we have to we take speed estimations. We put cameras out there for data collection for about a week, and 85% of the vehicles that pass by that system have to be traveling at 12 or more miles an hour for us to even put it into consideration. Anything less than the 85th percentile of violations, we don't have enough cameras for all the locations that we can put them in. So we have to be very specific. And as Christy said, we do have to work for speed cameras and for red light. We have to work with DOT District 3 for the state if it's on a state road, or we have to work with Montgomery County DOT if it's on a county road. Once we want to put a red light camera in, we also have OOTS from SHA, the Office of Traffic Safety, and they send their engineers out to the locations, and their engineers will not allow us to put a camera in, even though we've justified it with collisions and video validations. They go out and look at the intersection because as far from an engineering standpoint, they don't see automated enforcement as a fix. They look at it to make sure that all the signs are in the proper placement, that the yellow triggers happen at their set times and their guidelines. They look at everything they can do before they will allow us to put a red light camera in there. It's a very, we submitted permits in July of last year and we're still waiting. It's not quick.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Okay, so with bus citations, traffic article 21706, overtaking and passing a school vehicle, fine amount is set at $250. Again, it's a civil citation and no points. What you see on your screen is what I get from Bus Patrol once a month. And that information lets us know how many citations reviewed, how many we've approved, what our approval rating is, the tickets mailed out, in-state, out-of-state. On the right side of the screen, it'll show you the top 10 locations that most of the violations are captured at. And then below that are the 5 top reasons why my processors are disapproving the citations. We get those once a month. Montgomery County DOT has had to do an analysis on a majority of those 10 locations to determine if anything can be done by their standards to reduce the amount of citations issued in those locations. Unfortunately, most of those locations, as you can tell, are on state roads, and the state is not willing to change or re-engineer the intersection for the bus stop location. The bus stop locations aren't set by us; those are set by Montgomery County Public Schools. We merely approve the citations in accordance with state law. So that's one example. You know, what we like to see is for me, the approval rating, which for us is at 59% for the month of July. That's, you know, summer school was still in session, so there's still buses rolling out of there. You can see that there was, even in July, there was 2,695 citations. I concede my approval rating by each of my people, and it kind of helps justify the program when I can say that even though Bus Patrol sends over 2,600 citations, that only 59%, 59.7 of what they send us isn't worth us processing. It's not a valid citation, and you can see the reasons why most of them, their vehicle is unable to stop within a given amount of time because it's 20 feet. So if they can't stop within 20 feet, then they won't issue it. And another example will be for, let's see, here was June, just at the end of the school year. Again, 7,000 citations were sent over, 7,300 were sent over by Bus Patrol. We only approved 39 of those, so that's a 53.3% approval rating. And again, most of it is for vehicles that were unable to stop. So a lot of people think that we're out there trying to get you. There's only 53% of what they send us getting through, which is not what Bus Patrol likes to see. But I have a saying that when in doubt, throw it out. I don't want the reputation of our program. We're held to a pretty high standard throughout the country for the program that we've built this up to be. And I'm not willing to give that up by sending out citations that aren't prosecutable. I have had conversations with them on the amount of citations that they send us that are basically no good to us. They don't have the same requirement because their contract is held with MCPS. They don't have the language in their contract like I do for speed and red light for the 95% issuance rating. But in their next contract, I'm going to ensure that that's put in there because our approval rating would go up because they're not sending us a bunch of stuff to throw out. And again, here's the in-state versus out-of-state, paid and unpaid. You'll notice at the bottom of this one, it says out-of-state partially paid or in-state partially paid. They offer a payment plan because the citations are $250. They will only divide it in half. So the payment plans that are out there are only split. And here's the bus citations issued by year. As you can tell, the low years were the COVID years. Now we're starting to pick back up again, and we're getting pretty high for 2023. but an overall trend is going down. So we're about the same as we were in 2017. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much, Director Tippery. I'm going to recognize Christy and then Robin.
Yeah, I just have a question on the school bus citations. I've heard from people who've contested tickets for, legitimate reasons. Those maybe bogus tickets that have went through the process, and if you look at the video, it's like clear that there was something weird happening. And when they go to court, they're told like you can't even talk to anyone. Like there's no sort of appeal. They just say we're going to reduce your fine by $50, take it or leave it. I don't know like where that comes in the process. I mean, I am all for school bus tickets. I just am curious. It seems like a little bit of a flaw in the perception of the program.
So when my approvers go through all the citations, and before they go to court, the approver for that day that it's assigned to that day to go to court, they will go through all the citations to ensure that they're comfortable with testifying to what they see. So if there's one that had snuck through, they'll delete it before it ever gets there, and they'll make notification before court even starts that they've removed their citation or avoided their citation. Once the case is presented to the judge can adjudicate that case however he wants. He can increase, decrease, throw it out. He can go up to a $500 fine, and it's really, we have no say. It's his interpretation of the law and how he wants to rain judgment on the violation. So we've had, once, it depends on the judge. Some judges will increase it, and then they'll take a short break to let everybody decide whether they really want to contest it or get $500 and court costs added. We've had other judges come in and reduce them all down to just court fines. So there's really no checks and balances in how the judge administers the fines.
That's interesting. Christy, thanks for bringing that up. Vice Chair McKinney?
Oh, yes, Mr. Tippery. Hi, and thank you for being here. The question I had was, when you began, you noted that there were 5 vacancies, I believe, in the system right now. Where are those vacancies, and what effect are they having on your enforcement ability or lack thereof?
It's 2 supervisory positions in our field operations and 2 staff members in our field operations. We still have 1 supervisor and a manager that oversees the program. Everybody in the unit has been there for a while, so we've had no impacts.
And what are their responsibilities specifically?
They're responsible for turning the cameras on and off, basically testing the cameras every day to create a deployment log. Once you go to court, we have to have the deployment log and all the certifications to go along with those cameras that were utilized for that time frame. And we have to store that data. They also go out to the field, and we have to check every camera location. We'll send the guys out and for maintenance. They'll ensure that all the signs are there as required by state. They'll do some landscaping to a minimum to ensure that the cameras are capturing clear views. We've even had State Highway had come through one of our roadways and reduced the speed limit down from 35 to 30. They actually saw that in the morning deployment, that the day before they went out there and reduced the speed limit and didn't let us know. So even though it was capturing citations, it was capturing citations at 35, at 12 over, at 42 miles an hour versus 30. So it didn't have any impact as to the citations being issued, but that's to the detail that they're looking for when we turn these cameras on and off. The trapezoid has to be, the test shot has to be the beautiful shot of the trapezoid being exactly where it needs to be to capture all the correct information, that it's on the lanes of travel that we want, because anything can bump it. Somebody walks by and they're mad at our program and knocks the camera. Well, that's why we have to test that camera each and every day. Or they vandalize it. That's how we usually pick up most of our vandalisms. When they come in the morning and they start bringing these systems back online and taking a test shot, it's unclear. You can see it's all blacked out. It's spray paint. We have to send some guys out there to clean that off. So it's a time-consuming process because we have so many approved locations and we're adding more. to mark those locations and to help with the data collection and storage and paperwork. It's a heavy load for those guys, but they're doing a great job.
Thank you. Ms. Delane?
Yes, I have a few questions, but I'll ask them one at a time. So when you mentioned that they go to test the cameras, turn them on and off, that's in person?
No, that's remotely.
Okay.
So
Alright.
if the camera has it's more than just a camera and a battery. There's a lot of technology that's in that box. It's about $100,000 worth of technology in there. So it's almost like when a police officer turns on a laser unit, it will self-test, and any malfunctions will not allow the system to operate. We can also see the battery life. If the battery's gonna die anytime soon, we need to get some staff out there to change the batteries out. So the systems work, and if any one of those pieces in that system don't work when they're bringing it offline and then back online again, we have our contractors, technicians go out there and see what's going on.
Okay. The citations you mentioned are not bilingual. You said there's some sort of reason behind that, like the court has to decide that or something. What were you saying?
Yes, that would be a change in the citation, and right now the state of Maryland only recognizes English as the approved language.
Right, so they recognize English as the approved language, but having a bilingual citation would not be violating anything, right? It would only be helping the constituents.
That would be a change in the citation, and we can't do that.
We can't
not
do that, or we won't do that?
It's not
What's
in
the process to
discretion
do
of the
that?
county. If I understand it, it's not in the discretion of the county, it's in the discretion of the
Correct.
court, and it's
Correct.
court has made that decision. The District Court of Maryland has ruled on that. Is that correct?
Correct.
So there's nothing we can discuss in Montgomery County about that.
No. That's
This is a statewide decision every county has to follow. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Yep.
And there's no process in place to request for bilingual. Is that what you're saying? I just want to make sure.
Not that I'm aware of. It could
Okay.
possibly be sent to the administrative judge of the District Court of Maryland for consideration.
Got it. Okay. So I see that you track all of the hearings that are requested. Do you also track how many of your citations are found in favor of the vehicle or driver?
No.
Okay. So when you have your officer or employee, or what do you call them, reviewer? When you have the reviewer go to the court the day of the hearings and they're reviewing those citations or violations, you say they are able to overturn them at that moment, void them at that moment, or maintain the citation at that moment. And they're doing that the day of, before the hearings?
Yeah, they want to make sure that all the elements to the crime are there, and if they feel that there's something that's out of place that they don't feel comfortable testifying to, they will.
Okay. And that officer is just any officer. It's not necessarily the officer that reviewed the citation video originally.
No, it's not, and they're not an officer. They're civilian.
A reviewer. I keep saying that. I'm sorry. Just two more questions. Well, yeah. One of the things that you recorded was bus stopped off roadway. Does that mean like they stopped in a parking lot and deployed their stop sign, or what's that about?
No, it's if so the solid white line on the side of the road, any portion of the bus, any of those wheels are on the opposite side of that, the shoulder, that's no longer in the travel portion of the roadway, and we'll throw those citations out. The bus has to be in the travel portion of the roadway. So when if you see a school bus go 45 degrees across some travel lanes to try to add some safety for the children as they get off the bus, anything that bus captures are not issued. Anything that takes that bus out of the travel lane, we do not issue.
All right, and that means if they are in two travel lanes, is that is issuable?
No, it has to be in one travel lane.
One travel lane. Okay. All right. The payment plan options you said is only split into two. Who has control over that?
Bus patrol.
From the school system?
Yes. No.
Or
Well,
the
the contractor. We used to be in charge of that, but that's actually a responsibility of the contractor.
And is that something, I know you mentioned other things in the contract that you're very adamant about, like the 95% rate and such. Is that something that is also discussed when you are agreeing with these contracts? I ask
well-
that because let me tell you my motivation. That's like 25 hours of work for a lot of people, you know, like several days. So I still think that splitting it in two would be difficult for a lot of constituents. So I was wondering if that was something that was discussed heavily in the contract or not.
I wasn't here for that negotiation. That was, their contract has, I think, 2 years left. So there'll definitely be some changes that we'd like to see in the contract in the coming years. I don't believe that was heavily weighed in the contract during their negotiations, but I'm not. The contract is with MCPS. We just have a memorandum of understanding to process the automated citations. But we do work with MCPS to a point, but ultimately it is their contract. So yeah, we would definitely like to have some influence on the next one.
Thank you so much for your answering my questions.
No problem.
Thank you, Mr. Lane, for those questions. Mr. Ricks, I saw your hand, and then I see Mr. McKinney, and then we'll try to wrap it up.
Yeah, I guess my concern was on the question about the different languages on the ticket. I mean, the speed limits are set on the pole at 25. That's not in French, Spanish, or any other language. It's put in American language.
Correct.
So, I mean, I would not be in favor of the ticket, you know, having 20 different languages. I just think it needs to, the people need to understand the driving rules in Maryland and America.
Thank you, Mr. Ricks. Mr. McKinney?
Yeah, just quickly, and you may have mentioned this, Mr. Tippery, but I kind of got lost, and I want to make sure I understood. I thought you heard mentioning that initially there's a process where you diminish maybe the number of tickets that come before you if they don't meet the statutory requirements of a violation. So when these tickets are presented to the court and people get notices of court dates, are there any situations where, you know, there's that an officer would be involved in any kind of testimony, anything like that, or if any other way for those tickets to be dismissed or set aside in any kind of way?
No, we wouldn't have an officer go in and testify. It's purely by my staff.
Okay, so once it goes to court, it's a ticket and you have to show up and address
Right. Once the citation is mailed to you, we have to mail out that citation within 14 days by law. So once that citation is issued, you have the option to go to court, and there's a time frame in which you have to notify us, which is usually, I think it's 1 week before the due date of the citation. So we try to give everybody ample time if you want to contest it. And even if you call in, if you called in at, you know, that morning and said, hey, I can't make court, we'll give you a new court date.
Okay.
I mean, that's one of the aspects of the program that, you know, yes, you are receiving a violation, but we are willing to work with you. So in all fairness, we just want to make sure that everybody is afforded the same options.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McKinney. Mr. Tippery, thank you very much. I think you've given us a lot of insight into an amazingly complicated program. We, you know, had spoken generally in favor of automated traffic enforcement, and I think we will sort of continue to think about this, how due process applies, and what the ties or the connections are between this and traffic safety. So thank you very, very much. We appreciate your work and the work of your staff.
You're welcome. I'm going to put some links in the chat box. One link that will be to the annual school bus report. Delegate Moon had put into law last year. So the last week of December, we put out an annual report on school buses specifically. The state of Maryland requires us to put in an annual speed report, which you can find online, and every jurisdiction in the state of Maryland has to file this annual report with the state. And then to speak to our successes, the Federal Highway Transportation Safety Administration, unbeknownst to us, actually used us as part of their study. along with jurisdictions like Seattle, Washington, New York, to go over our successes in the program. And since that time, we've met with Portland, Oregon, and we're assisting New York City with their camera program and their RFP process. And that's a 2,000 camera program up there.
Very impressive. Thank you very much, Mr. Tippery.
You're welcome.
Our next item of business this evening is the bill pending in the County Council 32-23, which would amend the Policing Advisory Commission in a number of ways. This bill tracks not completely, but in some respects, the amendments to Bill 2723 that Delegate Lutke had introduced in the spring to abolish the Policing Advisory Commission. I had taken the liberty of modifying the letter that we sent to Public Safety Committee Chairman Katz in the summer regarding those proposed amendments, and signed up to testify on behalf of the commission tomorrow in opposition to the bill. That, of course, is conditioned upon a vote of the PAC tonight to authorize me to do that. If we decide I should not testify, or we want to submit that statement, I am your servant in this regard. I would simply say, if you've had, we've seen the bill has been out there since July, and it strikes me that it is that it weakens the voice of the community. It weakens the mission of the PAC. And I'll stop there. I see Robin is recognized, and of course I want to hear from the other members.
It seems to me that the thing to focus on most tightly is this notion of oversight. I think we can comfortably manage that issue by asking the council, or asking our friends on the council, or through Eric's testimony, asking the council to define oversight as the oversight of specific officer actions. That's the job of the new board, right? They're looking at how specific officers have complaints against specific officers. We don't want any part of that. And I think we can thus say, well, if you mean by oversight looking at the actions of individual officers, then fine, we don't want to do that. We're going to give that to the board. That is what is defined as oversight. And once we define that as oversight, then the limitations that some people are trying to put on the PAC will, I think, dissolve, because we can do anything else. It just says you can't do oversight. Well, fine, we don't want to do oversight if we define it correctly.
Okay, that's one approach. I want to, before we sort of get further into the things I want to hear, Ms. Branson and other comments. I had apologized. I had sent a draft late last night. Earlier today, I realized that I had not addressed properly the oversight language, and I sent a draft this afternoon at noon, in which oversight was addressed as the second item in the statement. I approached it differently than the way Robin suggested, which was to use a kind of a dictionary approach. But Ms. Branson, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. A few things. First of all, I read the testimony. I read the noon today version, and I'm supportive of it. I think I may have had one little thing I wanted you to insert about the role of the NAACP in the MOA
Yes,
in 20, so that was my only, because we I mean the NAACP should get full credit for that. So that was my only concern. And I'd also like to mention that the Public Safety Committee will have a markup on the 18th, a work session, they call them out here, a work session on the 18th, which is next Monday, to consider this bill, which is, I think, kind of a fast timeline, but I would like for people to have that on their, in their knowledge base. But I say all that to say that I'm happy to make a motion when it's appropriate and when people have finished talking about this, to approve the testimony as contained in the this afternoon version, and to ask that our chair present the testimony before the council tomorrow.
Thank you.
I so moved.
It has been moved. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Ty is second. So now we're discussing this. I appreciate very much that approach. I would just say that I would want to include the mention of the role of the NAACP as part of the historical background that I think is important for the PAC and for the 2000 Memorandum of Agreement and the longer history that underlies the creation of the PAC. I know that regarding the work session, Susan said that Chairman Katz has invited Ty and me to come to the work session on Monday, the 18th. And I am available and planning to accept the invitation. Are there other questions? Are there?
Excuse me, I just want, I mean, the work session is a public thing, so I'm confused as to what that invitation entails. Will you all be sitting there, because this is essentially the markup. This is where they, determine and ask, take votes on things like what Robin just mentioned, like, what does oversight mean? I mean, so if you all, we can all go, we can all go to work there, but my question is, what role are they asking you to play? Because I just don't, I don't want us to be window dressing. I want us to be, actually involved participants.
Thank you.
No, they don't allow, the public doesn't get involved in those work sessions, right?
And that's why I'm asking. Everybody can attend, but only certain people are allowed to speak. And I just am asking what that invitation entails.
The thing is, I understand it, staff has said that the chair would like Ty and me to be available to answer questions at that session. I see Christina's noting in the chat that no one can speak. That is correct. It's not a public conversation. It is a meeting of the committee. And the only people who would speak would be those that the committee recognizes to speak. It's not sort of a situation where sort of people sign up to speak. The hearing, any of us can speak tomorrow at the hearing. I'm not sure if one can still sign up at this hour. but that's a public, Ms. Branson's noting no. Christy, go ahead, please.
I was just gonna say, I've been asked to participate in work sessions before where they've recognized me in other contexts. So I would assume that if they're asking you to be there, that they would offer you an opportunity to speak or answer questions should questions arise.
And Christy, thank you. And it happened that the Public Safety Committee had had our commission participate in their meetings discussing the accountability board legislation a year ago. Excuse me, last spring. A year ago, last spring. We attended the sessions, and we were invited to speak. And I remember Alicia Hudson speaking, a number of times at those sessions. With regard to the question of the timeline, I can, in some sense, I'm glad that there is a sense of urgency, because as my understanding, as of January 31st, our terms as commissioners formally and totally expire. And as of January 31st, there will be no Policing Advisory Commission unless the council takes some kind of action. And so I'm pleased that they want to move quickly. I don't know how, what kind of amendment process or amendment in the nature of a substitute is possible. But and I suspect it's fairly broad, but at least it indicates that there is a desire that there be a Policing Advisory Commission after January 31st. Robin. Robin, your microphone, sir.
Yeah, okay, sorry. Just a very quick, I agree with Sherry that just being window dressing is not good. So I think I would certainly ask that you find out a bit more about what they anticipate your role should be, and that you should be given at least some opportunity guaranteed to speak for the PAC. And that seems like at least worth exploring that with the committee.
I don't know that we have any right or power to insist that we be allowed to speak if we're invited, or we could raise our hand and ask, on a particular point, to be recognized, but the chair runs the meeting.
Well, but you can, the chair has invited you to come. It is, I think, reasonable to ask the chair in what capacity he expects you to participate.
So why don't we ask, since Susan has some familiarity with this, perhaps she can explain this and set this particular point to rest. Susan?
Sure. When the Public Safety Committee invites people to be on the panel, they have an opportunity to both speak and answer questions, and quite frankly, ask questions. It's a polite dialogue back and forth. Anybody can attend who wants to, and often the chair, if he or she recognizes somebody in the audience, they may ask them to come up to speak as well. But Eric and Ty have been invited to be part of this panel and part of this.
Oh, that's different. That wasn't clear.
So I'm sorry. That's the typical procedure that we go through at council.
Sure. Thank you.
Christina, your hand is next. Ms. Delane, you're recognized. Did you want to be?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. I was still on mute. I said, Susan actually answered my question perfectly. The second question was about tomorrow's meeting, which is distinctive from the work sessions. And this is a procedural question that hopefully Susan can answer too. In those meetings as well, unless you are previously approved, you're not able to speak or request to be recognized. Is that the correct procedure?
You can sign up to testify for 3 minutes. Only one person who is representing the PAC may represent the PAC to do so, but anybody can go testify. I need to check on what the deadline is or was to sign up for testimony for tomorrow, and I'll put that in the chat.
And so, and if someone showed up tomorrow, let's say not us or whatever, just general procedure, if someone showed up to the meeting tomorrow and they had something to say, they would not be able to unless they were previously approved. Is that the procedure?
That's correct, but they can always submit written testimony.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Christina. Vice Chair.
Yeah, I think everyone is the same concern, and that is the clarity of purpose, whether or not we'll be able to express an opinion that's consistent with what this commission believes, or whether or not we may be used as window dressing to appear that we support something that we may not support. And therefore, everyone is saying that we need to be able to clarify that to some type of communication. And if we're only going to be there and not communicating, then, you know, what is the purpose? You're kind of being utilized as a pawn. So I do agree that it would be a good idea, regardless of what has happened in the past, since they made a request, they should be able to easily clarify the extent to which we can participate. And I think that's pretty much what everyone is asking.
So if I understand, the PAC is asking Susan if you either would convey back to Chairman Katz or share at some point any more clarity about the substance of the invitation that has been extended to Ty and me for next Monday. I don't know that is and we'll appreciate that. I think the key matter before us, looking at the time, is the motion before us regarding the draft statement that was shared with everyone this afternoon. And so at this point, if people wish to speak to that or to make suggestions, that would be what I think would be most efficient. Dr. Gaster?
Yeah, two things. One, I would like to have a discussion about the notion of oversight. And second, actually sort of related to this, the very last line of the letter calls for a change of wording to actually include the word oversight. And I would object to that. I don't think that we should be, I think this is a trap. And we don't need it. We have I like the idea of the Community Policing Commission. I think that's great. I think that would be just fine. But let's dump the notion of oversight out of it, because I think I looked at your dictionary-based definition, Eric, and I don't think it really pushed hard enough to differentiate between oversight of individual police officers and sort of policy review and analysis and recommendations. I don't regard your point that we have no regulatory authority over the police department is also an important one, because it means that I think, at least my understanding of that is that in law, then we are not an oversight body, because we do not regulate the police department. Oversight requires that you have some regulatory capacity, I think. Tell me I'm wrong. I'm quite happy to be told that I'm wrong, but that's how I would interpret it. And so I think we are best served by you pushing our own definition of oversight, which I think is a reasonable one, and then we're left free to do everything else.
So and I'm open to your approach. You know, when I hear you say oversight is a trap. You know, that to say we have no role in oversight because oversight means what the PAB does with respect to specific complaints of officer misconduct. And that the review and consideration, the analysis, anything other than those, than the direct sort of examination of allegations of officer misconduct, that's oversight. And that's not us, but anything else in terms of the, the problem.
Thank you.
The problem is I'm stumbling is that actually, what we're talking about is, of course, a kind of oversight.
No. It's the council that provides oversight.
Okay.
We provide advice.
Okay. I'm comfortable with, I want to hear what Lori and Christy have to say on this. Lori.
Thank you. I just wonder if we need to get into this whole oversight question anyway. If we have a sentence or two that says this is what the PAB does, and this is what we do, without mentioning the term oversight in the paragraph, because we have so many different definitions of oversight that I think that we're going to create a place where everybody's going to stumble if we even use that term. So I'm not totally sure that we need it, and it might cause more problems than it's worth. So if we say this is what the PAB does, this is what we do, enough.
Well,
so
Lori, just to address your point, the reason we're discussing oversight is because oversight's in the bill. And in the bill says we cannot do anything called oversight. And I saw that as a, oversight in the broad sense, not in the sense of PAB. I saw this as a way to, in effect, make the PAC a toothless kind of thing, that anytime we would propose, let's look at traffic cameras. Wait a minute, traffic cameras, that's oversight. You can't do that. Let's look at,
God.
that was, that was how I understood it, so
Agreed.
I want to hear from
Okay.
Christy, then Ty.
So
and
maybe
then-
I'm just trying to make it too simple. Sorry.
Christy,
Yeah, I think I agree with Robin. I'm not sure the specific language, but when I read the tasking of the PAB, it's very specific about handling complaints, individual officers, some of that like very specific police oversight in the narrow sense of the term. Now, have they kind of expanded it in the way that they've set up their work plans? I don't know. I haven't followed enough of the PAB to know exactly what they're working on. I see this body as a little bit different and actually unusual in the case of like some of the other county boards, committees and commission, in that we were set up to provide advice to the council, as Robin mentioned. I don't necessarily see that as oversight in the sense of a narrow definition, but providing advice that might help to influence laws or policies or operations of the police department or budget and like this sort of thing. And I think that there is room and space for both of those entities to exist because we're providing a different perspective. It's broader, it is more community based. Honestly, I think the sort of direction of the bill like kind of went in the right direction. Whether or not it was watered down too much or taken too far afield, I haven't really settled my mind on that.
Thank you. Ty?
Yeah, I find myself agreeing with Robin and what Christina just added in terms of not walking down the road of this being an oversight body and simply saying something to the effect, this has never been an oversight body, period. And sometimes just simple, straightforward language says everything that needs to be said. And we can state, as Christina just said, that this is a advisory commission to the council. And then this has never been an oversight body of the Montgomery County Police Department. Period.
Got that. And Mr. Ricks?
Yeah, I agree. Many years ago, there were organizations who wanted to have an oversight group that was looking at the police department. The Maryland law then was saying, I believe, that it could not happen. even though other jurisdictions had oversight committees. Now, there's an organization in the council itself that does oversight. And so I don't see that being our role. I see us being a role of advising on policy and the ability to give positive or give another insight to the police department on what we see from the public policy.
I am hearing a strong consensus to change the language regarding oversight to lead, to sort of make clear that we are not an oversight body and we're not seeking oversight authority, and that we're not the least bit troubled by subsection K that says we're not an oversight body, because our role is to provide advice to the council. And so I will change my draft testimony entirely to do that, and to take out oversight as well in my suggestion of a different kind of name, and to distinguish us from the PAB.
Mr. Chair, if in fact they want to pay us like they pay in the PAB, more than oversight.
I second that, Mr. Ricks.
I suspect we're all going to be history, but I may be wrong. Ms. Delane?
Yes, I do still, did I hear you correctly, Eric, when you said that you would remove the suggestion of changing the name?
To drop the word oversight in the name change.
Okay. And then, so we're coming to a consensus that we are an advisement board, not an oversight board. Would that be a good distinction to put into your sixth point that you make in your writing here to further distinguish us from the PAB, or from the PAC, or no, I'm saying it right, PAB, where they are more of an oversight and we are more of an advisement, to help guide the council members' minds into what makes us distinctively different. It seems they need help with that. They need help. They need us to help them with that. And I think maybe distinguishing us from one is oversight and one is advisement is a very clear distinction, as long as we all agree that's our role as advisement, and which it sounds like we all kind of have now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think just to add to that, Christina, it's like advisement on things like operations of the department and, equity and how policing shows up in our community, like those types of issues.
For example, if I'm still permitted to speak, Captain Tippery may not have been at PAB. Wait, am I still getting my acronyms messed up?
You're right.
Okay, we would not likely be at PAB to discuss something very important to the community that he discussed with us today, that equips us with a way to represent the community and still push the community's agenda. So where would Captain Tippery provide this information to the community? We are that conduit. So if we're not there as that advisement, then who is,
Thank you.
Especially as some of the programs are compartmentalized, as Captain Tippery mentioned, like a lot of this, for example, the school bus program falls under the school system. We are there to kind of be able to track that trail and to make sure those gaps aren't missing, things aren't falling through those gaps. And I don't know who would do that if we weren't here. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Branson.
Hi, yes, so I just want to say and suggest this to you. The NAACP is suggesting in its testimony that the name be changed to the Advisory Commission on Policing, because, that seems kind of straightforward. And I'm sure Lori could support this notion, because I think each of us spend, 20 some years doing oversight. we oversight. And, you know, and the problem here is that, you know, the bill contains this word, and that word is not defined.
Right.
And
Let's
you
define
know,
it.
and no. See, that's the problem,
Yeah.
because we're now talking about practice and procedure and process of the legislative branch. And
Yeah.
so as I said before, what needs to happen is that this discussion needs to occur at the work session, not in this testimony. You know, you don't, it is simply the trap you suspect, Robin, would be the trap we fell into if we had any discussion of the word oversight in our testimony. This is an issue for a work session. So we really need to understand that. You know, you don't talk about everything everywhere, right? So what I'm proposing is, you know, what we should say is that we believe as an advisory commission, our role is to review programs and practices and policies of the Montgomery County Police Department as they affect the residents of this county. That's it. You can call that anything you want. Okay. And I think, like I said, this is throwing around that word oversight. You know, as I said, Lori and I did oversight for 20 some years, and so you can call oversight anything you want. Okay. It is not linked with a regulatory authority. I didn't have regulatory authority over anybody, you know, but I could make people change some programs, you know. So let's understand. Let's understand that we have no business talking about this at this juncture.
Thank you.
Discussion needs to occur later. Talking about that at this juncture does in fact put us neatly in the snare that I'm sure some of the people who don't want us around, they want us to fall into that trap. Okay?
Well, I just am so appreciative of the insight that you have brought to this, and I apologize for having blundered into their trap so enthusiastically. I'm going to, you know, so Mr. Riggs.
Yeah, just I move to amend the letter to redefine that the meaning of whatever.
Yes, that whole section will be completely revised, and it will be taken out. It'll be taken out. I'll take it out.
Okay.
I like what Sherry said. I really like Sherry's.
I hadn't finished.
Yes.
But again, it may sound funny, but if you mention money to them, they're gonna take it out. If you mention to them to pay the us, they'll take it out. They'll find a way to take it out.
So Ms. Delane, and perhaps we can sort of come to a vote soon. Ms. Delane?
Yes, I just, Sherry, I just want to understand what you're saying. So you said something, I think that a lot of people probably have a lot of background and experience, and so they are putting together what you're saying and why that's important to remove part or some of this letter because it's not the right forum, but it will be at the work session, the right forum. But at the work session, we may not always have a seat at the table. So then in the past, how does that tend to work if there's not a seat at the table for us to speak? I understand we were invited this time, and I speak for we when I say Eric and Ty, I'm combining us. So we have a seat at the table, and from Susan's perspective, what she's told us historically has happened, there's opportunity to speak there. So that's great, but like, just so I understand, and I'm not walking away from this meeting with some sort of misconception, there are times in which a work session happens and there's no seat at the table for those that it affects. In that work session. So then if that information was not in this letter at a hearing, where would it be? Do you understand what I'm saying, Sherry? I'm just a little, I want to make sure I understand what you procedurally saw an issue with in the trap that you have so kindly helped us to avoid.
It'll come to public hearing.
I'm not real sure. I understand your question with all due respect. Let me just say that, and I'm happy to talk to you offline to sort of sort this out, but it is true that that everyone that is why I asked earlier to get clarity on the role that the commissioner, the chair and the vice chair were being asked to play at the work session. That's precisely why I wanted clarity on that.
Right.
Now, to be clear, what happens at the work session is that amendments and language and all that is discussed, right? And sometimes, most of the time, the committee will take votes on, particular language and, all kinds of stuff, whatever. And usually, there's only one work session. There can be additional work sessions, but usually it's just one. I'm thinking that but anyway, I don't want to get too far afield. So whatever's decided at that one becomes the new bill, if you will, the amended form of the bill. And that goes back to the council for vote. Okay, that's normal process, right? Now, between those 2 points, work session's over, the committee has voted, and now we go back to council. There is opportunity for the public and everybody to weigh in, on what has been said and done at the work session, and other council members who were not members of the committee can offer amendments, that either strip some of the stuff the committee did, add to it, whatever, and that becomes the new stuff, the new bill that people vote on. All right. And that new bill, that new version, if passed, well, that becomes the law if it's signed into law by the executive.
Okay, that makes
I
sense.
hope I'm
Yes.
making this okay. So
Yes.
now, so my point earlier was that, look, there's several opportunities to have this oversight discussion. We don't need to have them here. We don't need to have them right now, tomorrow in the testimony.
Okay.
And it really is very,
It's a distraction, like a red herring happening here.
bang, bang. That is what I see, but I'm old and cynical. So that and that's why I have cautioned that we should not go there.
Sherry, I think that's very helpful. I want to recognize briefly Dr. Gaster and then Vice Chair McKinney, and we can try to wrap this up.
I just wanted to continue this to understand fully what Sherry was just saying. It appears that you're saying that there are tactical reasons why it's better to have the question, this question brought up for discussion at a later date when other council members can weigh in, rather than having the conversation in the Public Safety Committee where it acts at where let's say it may be less favorable to us, or that we may have better options later. If that's what Sherry, if that's what you're saying, then that sounds fine. I don't have a problem. if, you know, there's always a time to bring up these kind of things. And you're suggesting, I think, that there are better places.
Correct. And I'm suggesting further that, you know, the best lesson anybody on Capitol Hill ever taught me was this. Once your adversary knows your strategy, you no longer have one. So I would suggest that we decide to table this oversight, you know, put it in the discussion, because that's just not, it's not fruitful. It's just not fruitful on a whole lot of different levels. And we, you know, maybe before before Eric and Ty go to the work session, you know, we can have, you know, maybe they'll have questions, maybe there will be, we can reach an understanding about what the approach should be, and maybe not, because I don't want to violate anybody's rules, but you know, there's absolutely nothing that would prevent us as members of this commission from also showing up at that work session.
Sherry, could I ask you to do one thing, which is, I really liked your positive statement about what we do as an advisory board. If you can remember what you said.
I wrote it down.
You wrote it down. Can you put it in the chat so that we can all see it? Because what I'm hearing from Sherry is that it's not a good idea to bring up the oversight notion, but on the other hand, it doesn't seem to me that it's a bad thing to emphasize the more positive vision of what we actually do and why we do it. That seems like a reasonable thing to do at any time.
I agree. And if you know, my language works for you all, then, you know, feel free, use it.
Vice Chair.
Oh, yes, I think we mentioned earlier that we were going to clarify the purpose of the invitation that was extended to the chair and myself. And based on the conversation that we've had just now, I would suggest that we do this. If we're going to clarify that, why don't we also ask, since she said she was available, if Cherie could accompany the chair, with all due respect to him, and myself to this meeting, since we're going to be asking anyway. And then that way, based on her extensive experience and knowledge in dealing with the council, the thing that we can't control is what the council may or may not ask us. And if we're asked about oversight, for example, we're going to need to provide an answer, you know, to that question. So I think that Cherie would be very helpful to the chair and myself by being present, since she said she was available. So I'm just throwing that out there to the other commissioners to see how they feel about that.
I mean, you know, last time I checked, I'm still free to travel in the United States. So that could change at any moment. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'll be there. So you know, if people want to ask me questions, I'm sure they will. So I don't think, I mean, you know, as long as I'm free to travel in the United States, I'll be there.
I think that's fine. The only thing I was trying to do is respect the fact that the chair and myself had been invited, and that if we're going to bring an additional person, especially someone that we may rely on to speak, then we should, you know, let them know that, or let them approve that, in essence.
Yeah, I don't think we should do that. I don't think we should do that. I'll just be there, because Because, you know, the thing about me in my life is that, you know, I may have to wear different hats at different times, right? And so if I don't want to go being a PAC representative or whatever, because I may have to put on my NAACP hat, you know.
Okay.
So, you know, what is most important, and I personally, you know, with all due humility, what is most important is that I'm happy to be there. You all, when you're sitting at the dais, can say, I mean, you at the table can say, you know what, Miss Branson might want to weigh in on that. You can do that.
Okay.
There's no rule against that. I
Mrs.
don't have to be formally invited for that to happen. You
Mrs.
know,
I moved the
so
previous
there
question.
you go.
Friends, I think we're getting into the procedural details of next Monday's meeting, perhaps a little more than we need at this time. We've got one other, what I'd like to do is I would like to accept, so Mr. Ricks has moved to amend the draft statement to take out the oversight language to conform with what our conversation has been. I second that amendment and ask if there is a further discussion of that. All those in favor of amending it to take out the oversight language, then raise your hand. Okay. Any opposed? I see no opposition. Any abstentions? I see no abstentions. Motion carries. The question now occurs on adopting the proposed testimony with that as amended. Excuse me?
Call the question.
Yes, that's the question. So adopting the testimony as amended, raise your hand. The only hand I don't, that was unanimous.
Yeah.
Very good. I appreciate the unanimous support, and I will modify it and you will all see it later tonight before I go to bed. The last item I believe on the agenda for this evening is a discussion of the annual report.
No, we have one more thing.
Excuse me, I have two items, correct. We have that and we have the clearance data. I am willing to, so how do friends want to proceed? I'm noting the hour, it's 8 o'clock. I'm comfortable going later. We did go later, Mr. Lane.
I apologize, Eric. Before this question of the naming convention that's in the letter, since we just voted on that, it has the name oversight.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Christina. If I may interrupt, what I'd like to do is to ask that we take the same name that is proposed by the NAACP as our suggestion that it be Advisory Commission on Policing.
Yeah, I second that.
Does that address your concerns, Christina?
Can you repeat what we're voting on? I'm sorry, I was going to wish farewell to Captain Jensen and it distracted me from the name.
Advisory Commission on Policing, as suggested by the NAACP.
Are we voting on if that's what we all agree on, or are we putting out other names right now?
I was proposing that we include that as an alternative to.
I don't agree with that name. I like the name that you put in here because it includes community, and I think that's what ties us and distinguishes us, is that we are community driven. And so I think that's like the point that they struggle on. And so it's important to make that part of our identity. And that way we're identifiable to the community as well. The name will draw in the constituents here. So I don't even know if we need to necessarily change PAC because it says exactly what we are, Policing Advisory Commission. Maybe we just need to change, just add the community to the front.
Yes, so I'm certainly open to Community Advisory Commission on Policing if that better addresses your concern and the concerns of others. I'm willing to take that as an amendment and see a show of hands. Community Advisory Commission on Policing. Raise your hand if you'd like to see that. Community Advisory Commission on Policing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
I don't have a preference either way.
Okay, so it's okay. So community advisory. Thank you, Christy. That's fine. So I make that change. Christina, thanks for bringing that up. That's important.
Thank
Eric, I'm sorry. Mr. Ricks, did you want to cast a vote on that in some direction?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought he voted yes. Vern, we can't hear you, Mr. Ricks.
I abstain.
Okay, 2 abstentions. I'll note that as a footnote in the testimony. That is, you're comfortable with Advisory Commission on Policing, you abstain on the word adding community.
I don't care, hell or high water, either way. It ain't gonna change what they do, so.
I think with all due respect, the notion that's most, that we most have to get through to the council and to the Public Service Committee is that the effort to make, to change the name to include all public service, is the effort we're rejecting. That we really want this commission to remain one that focuses on policing.
Yeah, I
And
think
so
Eric-
whatever,
Eric
whatever
said-
name they come up with that only involves the word policing, that's what's important to me, I think.
My concern with that is that they will create another group in the county, and like they did with the PAB, legislation will come out and they'll pay them some money or give them all the services that they need, and then next thing we be back on the chopping block again.
Well, we can't, the name isn't going to affect that. So we'll just have to wait and see, Vernon.
Vernon, I think that's an insight into sort of how the opposition to this kind of role could play out. But I'd like to conclude that I'm noting that our staff also has a schedule and may not be able to stay much longer. The question, so we've got the question of the annual report in front of us. And we've got the question of the clearance data.
Do we do that first? Because it's very, very quick.
I'm happy to, so I mean, the annual report, of course, was I'm happy to delay the annual report, just to note that it was due at the end of July, to note as well that Dawn Lutke saw this as a major failing of us, that we had not submitted an annual report in 2022. And therefore thought we might have disbanded or something. But I think it's a long report. I think it deserves your fair consideration and not be rushed. So I'm happy to postpone it. Mr. Ricks.
The only thing I see about delaying it is it gives another bush to burn.
Yeah. It's a good point.
I agree. I didn't see anything, I think I sent you one comment about including the Attorney General's thing, and that they now investigate police involved shootings as a result of state law. So and they have the power to prosecute. So I guess I'm a little confused as to why we would be putting off a vote on what I think is a finished product. I mean, I agree with Lori's comments about formatting, but we can make it pretty, and we can include those comments. And I guess what I would like us to vote on is the notion that we agree with the annual report, and we are giving the chair the I don't want to say opportunity, but we are giving the chair the flexibility to make technical corrections and to then submit the report to the council. That's what I'm moving.
I'll second that.
We approved the report with the chair having the flexibility to make technical corrections and submit said report to the council. That's my motion.
I second that.
Gary's motion, second by Dr. Gaster. Further discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and Mr. Ricks, how do you vote? Those opposed? Those abstaining? I saw everyone's hand in favor except Mr. Ricks. Mr. Ricks, how do you want to be recorded?
I'm sorry, I had to step away for a minute. I'm in favor, whatever.
That's fine. Okay. Thank you. Okay, very good. That motion carries. Susan, do we have three? Can we stay on for can we address this in 3 minutes, Dr. Gaster? We're sort of up against
1 minute. It will take 1 minute.
Dr. Gaster, you're recognized for a minute.
Thank you. You
10,
mentioned
9, 8, 7, 6.
Thank you, Bernard. I can beat you to the end of a minute. Some of you will have seen the data provided by Captain Satinsky about clearance rates. They are concerning in a number of different ways. The falling rates. I did some brief comparisons with Fairfax County. Fairfax County clearance rates are not falling. So I have two questions related to this. One, can MCPD provide somebody who can give a clear explanation of how they view clearance rates and the evolution of clearance rates over time, including at the district level? That's one. And second, can MCPD provide information about what other jurisdictions they use to compare on their clearance rates? Where do they get their benchmarks? That's it. Less than a minute.
So what I understand then is it is a request for, is it a briefing?
Yeah, a briefing. Yeah, just a briefing.
Okay, so it has been moved that we ask the MCPD to provide a briefing to us on these matters at our next meeting. All those in favor, raise your hand. And it appears to be unanimous. Very good. With that, I think we're ready for a concluding motion.
I move that we adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
I second that.
Hallelujah.
The second was from Christie?
Yeah.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. Raise your hand. Very well. Thank you, everyone. Very, very much. A very fruitful evening. And I just, again, I am so delighted to be working with all of you. And tune into council tomorrow and see how I do. And Ms. Branson will also be there representing the NAACP. So we'll keep you all informed.
What time is that tomorrow? Because
Bye, everybody.
we got something at 11:30.
It's I think is it 1:30 or 2:30?
Okay, so it's after. Okay.
It's 1:30 for tomorrow.
Yes, it's 1:30.
Okay.
Yeah, to be clear, I will not be there. I have a doctor's appointment. There will be another representative of the NAACP. I will be there earlier for the African Heritage Commemoration, but I will be leaving. So you will be in the wonderful hands of somebody else from the NAACP.
Wrong
Okay.
wrong meeting. It's the African heritage,
I said African Heritage, Vernon.
not African American.
I didn't say African American, Vernon. You
Okay.
heard that. I didn't say that.
All right. Bye.
Thank
See
you all
you,
very much, everyone. Have a good night.
see you
Good
tomorrow.
night, Eric.
We're adjourned.